60 Minutes Overtime.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
This week on 60 Minutes, we're examining election 2024. County by county, state by state, voters shifted to the right, even in demographic and geographic strongholds thought to be Democratic. To understand why, we spoke with Anthony Salvanto, the CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys. He told us there are three main factors behind the support for President-elect Donald Trump.
The first one, probably the most important, is the economy. But within the economy, specifically inflation. All throughout the pre-election polling, all throughout the campaign, voters had told us that was the top issue. It was the major factor. Donald Trump had always had an advantage with people who said the economy was their top concern. Now, asking voters, well, wait a second, the numbers on the macro level, the government statistics about GDP growth, about the jobs market, all were pointing to a strong economy. Why do you rate it then as bad? They said, well, it's personal experience, not macro data.
The past 4 years were terrible.
What do you mean?
They were terrible. Interest rates on credit cards went up, electric bill went up, gas went up, TV cable went up. I know all my bills went up.
For Roz Werkheiser, inflation has been as contagious as the pandemic that set it off. A diner manager in eastern Pennsylvania's Northampton County, Werkheiser told us she voted for Trump in hopes that the fever of high prices will break under his administration.
I heard him say he wants to get interest rate on the credit cards down. And for the waitresses at my place, no tax on their credit card tips. So maybe that would help out a little bit. Those things maybe he can possibly do. I'm hoping he does.
That hope led many voters to look past Trump's history. 2 impeachments, the January 6 Capitol riot, legal challenges, including 34 felony convictions. Anthony Salvanto says the second factor to look at in Trump's victory is his Maga base that has always lifted him up.
It's just under half of self-identified Republicans who call themselves members of the MAGA movement. This was a core part of the base that absorbed and repeated and believed his narrative, that these were political prosecutions in nature. You saw a majority, 2/3 of Republicans, who consistently said that they felt like the 2020 election was fraudulent. Of course, it wasn't, but they believed that. And so that completed a narrative all across where he never saw any erosion from that base.
There are a lot of lessons to be learned. And I don't mean by me, I mean by Democrats, by politicians generally.
Democrat Susan Wild represents Pennsylvania's Northampton County in Congress. At least she will, until January. She lost her bid for re-election last Tuesday.
I do still maintain, based on the things that we got accomplished in the last Congress when Democrats were still in the majority, that we are still the better party for the working class, but we are not communicating that well at all, and we are getting way too caught up in lofty social issues. And I'm sure somebody watching this is thinking, lofty social issues? Women's reproductive rights are not just a lofty social issue.
Wild's story paints a picture of the third factor Anthony Salvanto says contributed to Trump's win, the impression that Democrats are out of touch and are unable to move voters onto the issues that the party cares about.
Number one was abortion. And the Harris campaign, of course, tried to make that a priority, tried to get higher support from women on that issue. But one thing you noted throughout the campaign was that while abortion was a strong factor for so many Democrats and so many women, those numbers never increased over time. On Election Day, we saw Kamala Harris run behind a lot of the ballot measures that were on in states in Florida, in Missouri, in Arizona, among others. The abortion rights, reproductive rights side of those measures got more votes than Kamala Harris did. That was because there were a lot of Republicans who voted for Donald Trump and the reproductive rights side of those amendments. The second part of this, which you might call a disconnect, was on cultural and societal issues, efforts at promoting gender equality in the U.S., efforts at promoting racial equality in the U.S. We saw these big splits where the folks who felt that those efforts in general were going too far in the United States, those folks voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump.
Now, like all presidents, it is up to Donald Trump to fulfill the hopes of the people who returned him to power.
All presidential candidates make a lot of promises that they
Of course.
don't keep.
Of course, they all do.
How important is that to you, that promises are kept?
Very important, very important. And I hope he does keep his promises.
How much confidence do you have in that?
I think he's going to try to keep most of them, yes. I really do. I really do.